This is the study session on ethical and professional standards. This is the reading on guidance for standards 1 through 7. This is standard 4, duties to employers, which has 3 components, the first of which is loyalty. In matters related to their employment, members and candidates must act for the benefit of their employer and not deprive their employer of the advantage of their skills and abilities, divulge confidential information, or otherwise cause harm to their employer. Remember that the core or the soul of the standards is to promote an ethical awareness when members are making financial decisions for others. Now, back in Standard 3, we had the duties to clients and potential clients, and clearly the client comes first, and there should be no conflicts of interest between the member and the client. But loyalty to the employer is a close second. Members must not engage in conduct that harms the interests of the employer, which includes keeping confidential information private. The employer is not without responsibilities. An employer must provide a working environment that promotes this ethical awareness. The employer must devise a compensation and incentive arrangement that is competitive and that discourages unethical behavior. Now, members and candidates must abstain from independent competitive activity that presents a conflict of interest with the employer. However, if there is an engagement in competitive practice, the member must notify the employer of the services provided, notify the employer of the expected duration and compensation, and only engage in that competitive practice if their employer consents. Now, the standards were almost written in preparation for financial analysts leaving their firm. And so when leaving an employer and when members seek new employment, they must remain loyal to their current employer until the resignation is effective. Members must not misappropriate trade secrets, misuse confidential information, solicit the employer's clients while still in their original employer, or gather client information. Now, this is all without permission. Now, clearly, when a member leaves one firm and goes to another, they can't do a memory erase. They can't forget everything that they learned. Now, loyalty also involves the use of social media, so members must make certain that they play by the social media acceptable rules. One suggestion is to maintain separate accounts for personal and professional social media activities. Now, loyalty to the employer can be a hazy scenario if the employer is engaging in unethical or illegal activities. I mean, clearly, if an employer is doing something that is illegal, it's in the best interest of the employer that the members keep quiet about it and don't report it to the authorities. But whistleblowing is permitted, but only if it's protecting the clients and only if it's protecting the integrity of capital markets. Of course, there needs to be a distinction between full-time employees and independent contractors. How do members comply with Part A, loyalty? They must familiarize themselves with the employer's competition policy. It's very common for contracts to have a non-compete clause, termination policy, and the procedures for reporting an incident, such as the whistleblowing, which we described in the previous slide, and then the classes of employees. Here's an example. Albert McLeish, CFA candidate, serving as an unpaid summer intern for an institutional money manager. During his time with the money manager, Albert closely worked with the firm's IT officer to develop a proprietary stock screening software. That sounds important. Near the end of the internship, McLeish lands a job as a stock analyst for a brokerage firm. McLeish leverages the knowledge and experience gained during his internship to develop stock screening tools for the brokerage. Is there a violation of this loyalty standard? Once an employee has left the firm, the skills and the experience that were obtained while employed are no longer considered to be confidential or privileged. So McLeish did not violate this standard. Second part of the standard is additional compensation arrangements. Members and candidates must not accept gifts, benefits, compensation, or consideration that competes with or might reasonably be expected to create a conflict of interest with their employer's interests unless they obtain written consent from all parties involved. A couple of key points here. That compensation and benefits cover direct compensation from the client and other benefits received from third parties. Now, of course, financial analysts ought to be compensated for their services. So even though there is a potential for corruption, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be so. Members must make sure that they document written consent for the acceptance of gifts and benefits and compensation. How can members comply with the second part of this standard? Immediately write to your supervisor or the compliance officer, just detailing the proposed compensation. And the details should be confirmed by the party offering the additional compensation. The key here is transparency, and the key here is disclosure. Let's take another example. Rachel is a research assistant, issues a report with a buy recommendation on smart homes. 5 bullet points here, each of which is very interesting. So after the buy recommendation, the CEO of Smart Homes later invites Priyanka for a tour of the company's headquarters. They'll discuss the real estate industry in detail. What does that sound like? Can you accept a tour of the company's headquarters? That sounds reasonable to me. The Investor Relations Office of Smart Homes sends over a private yacht so that Priyanka can travel from her coastal town to the headquarters. All right, let's take a pause on this one. Private yacht sounds tempting, sounds exciting. Private yacht, there's probably nice food on there, maybe some nice music. But even if you are 100% ethical and 100% committed to not being biased, the appearance of bias is going to play a role in this because surely we're all human and we can be persuaded, we can be influenced by the simple fact that we might think, hey, this was a really nice yacht. It was a really nice ride. I'm going to continue with my buy recommendation. So let's pause on that one. All right, so Priyanka accepts the meeting but declines the offered travel arrangements. Sorry, that sounds reasonable as well. Priyanka joins the CEO for a luncheon at a five-star hotel next to the headquarters. I mean, let's face it, at lunchtime and dinner time, you're hungry, so you have to eat. Does it matter if it's a 5-star hotel or a 3-star hotel or if it's a fast food chain? Upon returning, Priyanka provides a full review of the meeting, except details of the luncheon attended. Has she violated the code of standards? Well, a couple of things here that she did that were good. Declining the travel arrangements, that was a good thing. Notifying the compliance officer, that was a good thing. But she should have notified the location of the luncheon, even though she didn't know about it until her arrival. So if it's not practical to disclose before the event, it should be disclosed afterwards. Part 3, responsibilities of supervisors. Members and candidates must make reasonable efforts to ensure that anyone subject to their supervision or authority complies with applicable laws, rules, regulations, and the code and the standards. Members or candidates with supervisory roles have responsibilities to guide the employee conduct in an ethical manner. Remember, promote ethical awareness. Now, there's the sense of a reasonable supervision. I mean, of course, you can't supervise everybody under every decision at every time. Reasonable supervision. Now, how can we comply with this? How do members comply? Well, the first thing is that to designate a compliance officer. Remember that financial analysts and members are not required to be tax accountants or lawyers or estate planners, but members are required to have a basic knowledge of those topics and then know when to ask the experts. Now, the compliance officer should distribute procedures and update them, continually educate the staff. Remember, we're not lawyers, but we need to be aware of new laws. Review employee actions and promptly initiate inquiries when a violation occurs. What the compliance officer must do is to ensure that the system has good checks and good balances. And that completes Standard 4, duties to employers. Standard 5 will be next.